Okay, our next speaker is Doug McKenney. He's a sports performance specialist and has worked in the National Hockey League for 30 years. He broke into the league as its first full-time head coach in 1985, where he began a 4-season tenure with the Pittsburgh Penguins. In 1995, he moved to the Buffalo Sabres as their first ever strength and conditioning coach and has been instrumental in the development of young and veteran players, steadily improving their performance for the team ever since. Let's give a nice round of applause to Doug McKenney.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. I've never gotten through one of these slideshows. I'm more of a storyteller than a presenter, but I'll do my best to move this forward. The topic obviously is sports science on a budget, and literally, I over a period of time, I figured that I started in the 80s, and we never talked about data. When we were talking about data, it would have been a review of literature or research that we were looking at in a paper. We talked about, for the most part, information that was gathered from testing and evaluation. And, when I think about the way it's gone now, the technology that's being driven today is amazing. You can look at everything from GPS to heart rate variability, velocity-based training, tons and tons of technology-based data that's collected on a daily basis. And I think it's incredibly good. But on the other side of the coin, I think about how we did it and the way it began the process of information that was collected and why we did it. Like, for example, when we did a VO2 test, we were looking at it from the standpoint of, exercise prescription. This guy's got a 58 VO2. I know that I'm going to have to work him at this percentage of his VO2 for his minutes, his 45 115s, his 30 130s, whether it's on a bike or a treadmill or whatever. And that's how we used the data, so to speak. Same thing with the wind bike test. The reason why we were doing it was, what's the power, what's the capacity over time, and then when we were assigning a program to a player in the off season, it was based basically on how much power he had to improve based on his somatotype, his age, his body weight, based on the same position that he played within the league. So we were using this stuff for a purpose and an application. And I'm not saying that this isn't, it's just different. And it's a day-to-day thing now. And, that being said, the important thing that I think that needs to be stated here is it's not really about the data. It's really more important for you to realize how you can help that athlete. We are servant leaders. That's what we do as strength coaches. We're serving the athlete. We're serving the coaches. Our availability to them is so that we can produce their development, their level of performance, and reduce their chance for injury. Those are the things that we strive for. So, literally, we could call it intervention, but, any way you look at it, it's really not so much about the data that we're driving here. It's more about how we're going to work with these guys, make them better, improve their performance. The nice part about, where I'm at now, I was in the league, in the professional league for 30 years. I'm the founding coach for a company called Coach Me Plus. And basically, during the last 5 years that I was with the Buffalo Sabres, I commissioned a group of software writers to help me develop a plan so that I would be able to execute our collection of data, but also it started with just a builder, meaning I'm going to assign players from all over the world programs. So I've got guys in Russia, I've got guys in Finland, I've got guys in Western Canada and the States. I need to be able to supply them with a program and be able to evaluate and look at what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So it started with a builder, but at the same point in time, in season, I was utilizing this platform to look at their day-to-day stuff, the player load. Okay, and I was fortunate enough to have a device, heart rate device, so that I could actually look at metabolic load on a day-to-day basis. And then I had body composition. I had the typical prehab workouts. I had, just about everything that you guys put together for your athletes. But the nice part about where we are with Coach V Plus is we get to see what everybody's doing. We talk to everybody. We talk to you guys. We talk to, professional sports teams, colleges, universities, small and large. And we know that everybody's doing things differently. There are some budgets that are much smaller than other budgets and can't afford to do various different things. And we learn how they decide how they want to do things, and we help them get there and by doing it. And so one thing that I really want to make sure that you understand, in my perspective of this, it doesn't make me right, but I look at the data that's being collected today, and my thought is I don't really pursue that part of it as my relationship with the player. The player is the most important thing. And so we see them every single day. I mean, we see them more than the sports coaches. Sports coaches see them in season. And they see them, and they work with them for, during practice, but they're working with the entire group, generally speaking. And we work more with the group, and they come see us every single day, in season, off season, morning, afternoons. We see them all the time. We know more about them, their wives, their girlfriends, their kids, their dog. Is their dog a worker or a slacker? I mean, I'm talking about the dog. We know the dog's name. We know everything about these guys. And the reason why that's important is because this is a people thing. And the culture of sports performance is basically how you drive this. And you will be the drivers of this. It won't be the sports coach or the athletic director, or in my case, at the professional ranks, it wasn't the general manager who drove it, or the head coach, or the assistant coaches, or for that matter, the one that drives it is the one who's going to be asking and building the relationship with the player on a day-to-day basis. And they come to us all the time. We build that relationship with them. When they come in the morning and their hair is all over the place, and you could tell they were fighting the pillow, or we're the first ones to get last night's alcohol breath. We're the first ones to see everything. And they trust us, and that relationship's important. And that's why when the culture of this gets started, and you're talking about people and the coach-player relationship, strength coach-player relationship, you're also going to be able to now educate and teach them. And you're going to be able to provide information, motivate, and get them to a place where they can make significant gains, improve their development. And so, what I'm emphasizing here is the fact that the culture really is the driver for the success of sports performance programs, and you will be the driver. There are a few things that you can do, relatively speaking, that is, very cost effective. One clearly is questionnaire, subjective but very usable, weigh-ins and weigh-outs, and you can add body composition to that. That's something you can be doing on a regular basis every single day as far as I'm concerned. There's two things that lead to, what I would consider to be risks for injury and poor performance and, overall fatigue, so to speak, is glycogen depletion and dehydration. If you can fight those two things, you're going to win a lot of wars, okay? So if you're a solid ground and you can teach and educate your players about hydrating and getting the energy back in the muscle, automatically you're going to start winning. Okay, you're going to win on the performance side of things. So in the last one session, RPE, again, not costing much to do any of this. Okay, our athletes today, they live on this. They live on this. They're on this and iPads and computers all the time. So if they throw an app on here and you can get your athletes to wake up in the morning and the first thing, fill out a questionnaire, you got some data. You got a place to go right now that's going to provide you with enough information about that athlete over time that's going to be very, very helpful to you. In other words, he wakes up, she wakes up in the morning and bang, she opens up her phone, gets on the Coaching Plus app. Right now, how much energy do you feel like you have? Very fresh, very tired. Sleep quality, very good. Bad sleep. Sleep duration, 8 hours, 3 hours. muscle soreness, feeling great, very sore. Stress, mood level, I feel great, or I'm, relaxed, I'm positive, or I'm annoyed, I'm irritated, I'm having a tough time right now. All these things are easy for them to be able to fill. 5 questions, easy for them to fill that out right now, and that's providing with a great deal of information. And the key indicators here, the key tracking subjective data, the key to it is that you don't want to just look at it from that day's point. You want to look at it over a period of time. Because if you don't, literally what happens is you can make mistakes like this. Look at athlete A. He's doing pretty, if you look at it just the raw score, he's 5, 4, 4, 4, 5, 3, 3, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 4. That's pretty good. You wouldn't even, if you were looking at him, you'd say, he's fine. I don't really need to worry about him that much. Okay? But athlete 2, you look at the numbers, it's 3, 2, 2, 2, 3, 1, 1, 1. 1, 1, 1 is really kind of scary if you're just looking at data like that. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2. Okay? And literally, they're 2 different things, right? You're saying athlete 1 is not a concern. Athlete 2 might be a concern. But if you look at it from a standard deviation over a 6-day average moving, they're exactly the same. And so the bottom line is you can't just look at day to day and say, I need to jump in. I need to intervene here because there's a problem. You need to look at it over a 10-day period. You need to be able to look at this over time. Now, these are the types of, the great thing about Coach Me Plus is these are the types of things that you can look at easily. I mean, we're throwing this stuff out for you. All you're doing is potentially entering data points, and usually, like I said, you're not entering it, your athletes are entering it. So anyway, if you look at this one, the only one I might even be a little bit concerned with is the energy. But if over a period of time I notice, well, he's fine or she's fine, you can tell from looking at this through the standard deviation in a moving 6-day moving average. So what do we learn from this? Well, basically, we can educate our athletes about this. We can talk to them about nutrition, sleep, recovery. We have enough information to look at that and sit down with them and talk to them about how they can, potentially feel better on a day-to-day basis, just from subjective questionnaires that they're filling out on their own, and you're getting put right into your computer. We can also look at things from an individual and team trend standpoint. How does the team look overall, and what kinds of things can we pick from that to make changes with? And also, we're going to look for changes in the schedule and maybe adapt to the recovery of what's going on by changing the lift, changing the time of practice, changing the travel time. So whatever it might be, we can make some changes. And especially if we're tracking this over a month to month basis. In hockey, we're playing 7-8 months. Literally, the information that I was getting in September and October could be dramatically different than what I'm looking at in December and January. But if I have this picture of things and I'm able to look at it over time, I can look ahead and say, okay, Coach, maybe we need to stay in Colorado, Instead of flying home, the schedule has us flying home. Let's stay. Let's get some sleep. Let these guys sleep. We'll fly back to Minnesota because we're playing Minnesota on the way back to Buffalo. You can make these changes because you're ahead of the game with looking at this stuff. Second thing, hydration, way in and way out. Like I said, this is something that can be done every single day, easily. And it can be done, again, by the athlete on their phone, right on the app. You can weigh in, way out. Obviously, you want the same scale. You don't want them weighing in at home or at the residence hall or wherever they're staying. You want them to weigh in at the facilities, but they could still do this right here. We have a great scale, by the way. We developed a scale system called the Hydration Station. If you're interested, you can go to CoachMePlus.com, look at it. It's an incredible price, good scale. It's very fast. You can just push your picture. You got your whole team on your iPad. You push your picture. Basically, it says your pre-workout weight is. You step on the scale. It'll give you your weight. You take off. You go to the next person goes on. And it's rapid, and no strength coach has to stand there and take in weights. It frees you up to do the work that you need to do, which is far more important than standing there watching somebody weigh in. And it was one of the things that, quite honestly, I think our players appreciated more than anything else for two reasons, and I'll get into that. But the first reason is they didn't have to see me standing there waiting for them to weigh in. It's a simple process. I know how to weigh in, you know. I know you do, but I got to write it down. I got to give it to the coach. Well, now you don't have to. This report goes to Coach V Plus. That report goes to the coaches. Everybody's happy. So with the weigh in, weigh out, not only do you get percent weight loss, but with body composition, you also get fat-free mass, whether he's losing, gaining. You got fat mass, whether he's losing, gaining. A lot of this stuff comes over and becomes very critical to you. As a strength coach, if you've got an in-season program and a guy's losing fat-free mass, is your strength program good for in-season? Or is he not eating right? Something's going on, though. His fat-free mass is going down, his fat mass is going up. This is not good nutrition, and it certainly, perhaps, maybe has nothing to do with your program design, but something's not right. But you have the black and white data that shows you it, because he's weighing in, he's weighing out, and you've got the body composition, so you can look at his fat mass and his fat-free mass. So this is something that you want to consider doing, you know, in my opinion. The weigh in, weigh out should be done every single day. And then on the other side of the coin, the body composition would be something you probably would do every month. But what the players get out of this, and remember this, we are service leaders, so we are providing this service. But what we're doing is we're going to teach them, we're going to educate them about the importance of getting the fluids back. And 1% weight loss, okay, these are some things that we have to be concerned with. 2% weight loss, these are things we've got to be concerned with. You guys know this stuff. But a lot of times what happens is you don't have it in your information, in your player dashboards. You don't have it available to talk to the player about it. You know, it's on a piece of paper that's sitting there next to the scale that they wrote their weight down, and then you're calculating it out after, and this is done for you. You don't have to worry about it, okay? And that's a pretty important thing, because, like I said, your time is valuable and their time is valuable. They don't want to wait for you to calculate this thing out and figure things out. And I like this slide simply because, you know, Doug Casa at the Corey Stringer Institute talks about the fact that, you know, we need a lot of fluid. And it's a point that I want to make with regard to the scale itself that we, you know, our hydration station, is that I can tell you right now, the one thing that our players learned more than anything else with this scale was they were shocked at how much fluid they actually had to take in to get the electrolytes back. Because when he stepped in, like I said, he steps up, steps on the thing, it says you are 200 pounds. He goes out, he goes to practice, he works out, comes in, he rolls, he stretches out, gets out of his wet gear, pushes his picture, steps back on the scale says your post-workout weight is, and it registers it, he steps off, and he lost 4 pounds. Well, if you lose 4 pounds, you've got to take in almost 96 ounces of fluid, okay? 6 pounds of fluid, or 96 ounces, okay? And this is Casa's work. I agree with it. I found it to be the case with our athletes. Very critical in terms of, like I said, hydration and glycogen repletion, two things we want to hit hard. But during that process of getting that lost 2 pounds, he's got to get 48 ounces back, 3 pounds of fluid. It's amazing. They didn't realize how much sodium, potassium, chloride, magnesium, calcium that they actually had to take in, because we're not just concerned about the fluid. Let's be honest about this and be smart about it too. We're not just talking about water here. We've got to teach them, because if we are, you know, we're going to be urinating out a lot of fluid and not taking in a lot. Our fluid balance is going to be way off. We're not going to be hydrated. We're actually not going to be hydrated. Looking at this stuff charted over time, this is where you can sit down with them and say, look, you know, this is what we're looking at, okay? This is the type of stuff. You're in that far right side, scale weight change. He's well down on that, well up 2.5% of his fluid loss. And those things are the things that you can sit down and teach and educate with. And the more information that you have for them, black and white, charts and graphs, the better they learn and understand it. Again, you know, what do we learn? Again, it's about education. It's teaching our players the difference between hydration options. What's the water? What's the fluid? What's the hydrators that we need to have, meaning the sports drinks? And it doesn't have to be, expensive. You can pick ones that are what you think are the best hydrators, okay? And they can be available to them so they can actually get the electrolytes they need and the fluid. Of course, you're going to teach them about the weight loss and the chronic changes should require mentioned intake of fluid to bring athletes back to baseline information. We know that a guy who's losing 4 or 5 pounds is going to have a tough time getting that back if we've got back-to-back games. If we're playing Friday night and Saturday night, we want to make sure that we're getting back to that point. So we reduce the chance for injury, we improve performance, or we can elevate, be optimal during that time frame. Next thing is session RPEs. Again, very simple. I actually did it because I told you I did a lot of metabolic work with heart rates. I actually did some session RPE stuff too because I think it's important for them to realize, like I was able to tell them, in a typical, very hard practice, your player load is going to be 125. That's through training impulse. And I know that's pretty intense workout, okay? But they got to know that too, but I knew that on the side. I could look at that stuff and know that was an extremely hard practice. But what I really wanted to know too is what did they think of it? So I started doing some session RPEs, and the interesting part is that there's a linear relationship, and the studies have shown that that's true to be the case, but they're linear. When we saw a high player load with either metabolic or mechanical load, generally speaking, the subjective information that we were getting back was telling us the same thing. Okay, so this is a very effective way, cost-effective way to come up with player load. You can do this without spending a lot of money, and now you have load, you've got your questionnaires, your information about how they're doing with other things, and then you can also do your weigh-ins and weigh-outs for hydration and nutrition, with your body composition. So you got a whole bunch of data that you're collecting here. And so if you just take the Borg scale, and today's practice was hard, so it was a 5, and you just multiply that 5 by the time, the length of practice, so 5 times 40 minutes, then you get your workload, your player load, and now you have load. Like I would have load with a heart rate monitor, or load with a Catapult, or Zephyr, or any other GPS device, Polar. You've got player load. You can do player load by session RPE. A very valuable tool, and something now that you can actually look over a period of days and find out how they're doing. Okay, so you can look at these graphs right here, and it will give you. Basically, you're looking at training stress balance or monotony and strain. You're looking at session RPE's player load compared to one practice to another, or from one player to another player. Positionally would be better, but this is often better the case when you're comparing self to self, okay? Again, what did we learn? We can track sessions over time to build a history. We can know what it's like, what it's costing that guy, how much energy, how much work, what it's costing this guy to do the types of practices we have, and then we can make adjustments when we need to make adjustments. Use the history to build a library of sessions and average session RP values so that we can look at it and say, okay, well, we're playing this week, we're playing 4 games. Next week, we're playing 4 games. So that's 4 and 7, 4 and 7. What are we going to do on these other 3 days, both those... Good? Yeah? All right. So ultimately what I'm looking at here is how I can help the player, the athlete themselves, which is my main objective, but also my coach. One thing that I want to emphasize here is when you're collecting data, information data, you have to be really good at coaching the coach, okay? Because if you want, like this is a cultural thing too, again, if you want this information, black and white information, and you're sitting down and you're talking to the players about it, there are going to be some points and times where you got to go to the coach too, because there's a player who's come to you and said, my legs are heavier than heavy. I can't get off the floor. It's basketball, but I can't get off the floor. Or I'm skating in mud, if you're a hockey player. I got nothing. I got no juice. And all your indicators from the stuff that you're tracking show the reason why. It's a player load problem. He's been working too high a level for too period of time. Now, this is just a hypothetical, so don't, there are a lot of ways you can look at data. So don't, when you hear this, we can talk about training stress balance. And if you're training at a high level for a long period of time, just kind of up here instead of down here, you're pretty good. You won't have any problems, okay? The injuries kind of occur when you have one of these, okay? When you're here, it's high. This is low, this is high, and you're right on the high line, and you're there. This is the one that gets you a lot of times. And the research is showing. If you look at Gabbett and you look at a bunch of all the other studies, that's what it's talking about. But I'm talking about something different. I'm talking about just the fact that you can have this communication with a coach, and he will, if you've got it in black and white, he'll listen. He'll see it. He'll see the same graphs that I'm showing you. So, sports science with Coach Me Plus. Of course, I'm here to talk about sports science on a budget, but I'm also here to talk about the fact that you got a place to put it. It's Coaching Plus. And we have packages that really will help those that, don't have a large budget. And what will you be doing? Well, you'll be looking at dashboard visualizations. You'll be looking at your data so that you can communicate this complex information with the athletes themselves and the coaches. And then we integrate with so many different devices that it makes it easy. You're not the one that's loading the data. We're not taking up your time to do it. We're going to actually pull it from the cloud, or we're going to pull it some fashion out of the device itself into the computer, so you're not loading data all the time. What are you looking at? Well, you saw the wellness questionnaire, body weight. If you're using something like Omega Wave for heart rate variability, you might be using USGs for dehydration. Again, you might look at your body composition like that. The nice part about having something like Coach Me Plus is not only do you have an individual dashboard, and I'm working with you as an athlete, and I can turn this computer, this laptop around, and we can sit and I can talk to you about what we're seeing over the last 2 months. But when a coach taps on your door and he says, how's so-and-so doing? Well, generally they don't come in and ask about so-and-so unless they're concerned about so-and-so. And so, they'll come to you and talk about the team, but if they ask about so-and-so, they got a problem with so-and-so. They're a little concerned about what so-and-so's doing. So you can turn your laptop around and you can start talking about what's going on with them. You can go to the individual dashboard, but when you're talking about the entire team, you can use the team report. So the only 4 guys we got to worry about is Lincoln, Evan, Clay, and Jimmy. There's only 4 guys that are in red there. And you set, the parameters on all this with your staff, and you decide how this all works. But the nice part about having something like this is he doesn't have to go in and look at every single dashboard for all 25, 30, 35 players. He can just go in and look on this one team report sheet and say, boy, we're looking pretty good today, huh? And, so that's, obviously a very valuable tool. These are all the companies that we actually integrate with, so it makes it extremely easy for you to just utilize the information without having to load it in there on a daily basis. To conclude this thing, I'm going to tell you that, ultimately the bottom line is we're in a data-driven environment now because of technology. That's the facts. I started in the 80s. I didn't have to deal with any of that. I remember when I first started, a heart rate monitor, believe it or not, was this size. Can you imagine, skating around or running up and down a basketball court it had 2 harnesses, and it was about this size. And that was back in the early 80s. And now we have team units where they're just basically, a small band that's very comfortable. Players, after using it 2 or 3 times, don't even know they have it on. Same thing with the GPS devices. And so the bottom line is we're not going to get away from it. It's going to be there. It's going to get utilized, whether it's Whoop or whether it's Polar or whether it's Sunto or whether it's, doesn't make any difference. We're in, and it's part of what everybody's talking about. They're talking about mechanical load, metabolic load. They're talking about heart rate variability, quick recovery tests. It's there, and the expectation is that you'll know it, and you'll be part of it, and you'll utilize this stuff. And so when you fall behind on this stuff, basically they're saying, well, they really know what they're doing, and you could be right on top of it and be a great strength coach and not have this data-driven world like we're in. But what I'm saying is just that at some point in time you'll have to utilize it just like I had to, more or less. Any questions? Any questions for me? I'll be glad to take a few questions and comments, criticism. Come on, get out of here. All right, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. What are you looking at? Well, you saw the wellness questionnaire, body weight. If you're using something like Omega Wave for heart rate variability, you might be using USGs for dehydration. Again, you might look at your body composition like that. The nice part about having something like CoachMe Plus is not only do you have an individual dashboard, and I'm working with you as an athlete, and I can turn this computer, this laptop around, and we can sit and I can talk to you about what we're seeing over the last 2 months. But when a coach taps on your door and he says, how's so-and-so doing? Well, generally they don't come in and ask about so-and-so unless they're concerned about so-and-so. And so, they'll come to you and talk about the team, but if they ask about so-and-so, they got a problem with so-and-so. They're a little concerned about what so-and-so's doing. So you can turn your laptop around and you can start talking about what's going on with them. You can go to the individual dashboard, but when you're talking about the entire team, you can use the team report. So the only 4 guys we got to worry about is Lincoln, Evan, Clay, and Jimmy. There's only 4 guys that are in red there. And you set, the parameters on all this with your staff, and you decide how this all works. But the nice part about having something like this is he doesn't have to go in and look at every single dashboard for all 25, 30, 35 players. He can just go in and look on this one team report sheet and say, boy, we're looking pretty good today, huh? And, so that's, obviously a very valuable tool. These are all the companies that we actually integrate with, so it makes it extremely easy for you to just utilize the information without having to load it in there on a daily basis. To conclude this thing, I'm going to tell you that, ultimately the bottom line is we're in a data-driven environment now because of technology. That's the facts. I started in the 80s. I didn't have to deal with any of that. I remember when I first started, a heart rate monitor, believe it or not, was this size. Can you imagine, skating around or running up and down a basketball court it had 2 harnesses, and it was about this size. And that was back in the early 80s. And now we have team units where they're just basically, a small band that's very comfortable. Players, after using it 2 or 3 times, don't even know they have it on. Same thing with the GPS devices. And so the bottom line is we're not going to get away from it. It's going to be there. It's going to get utilized, whether it's Whoop or whether it's Polar or whether it's Sunto or whether it's, doesn't make any difference. We're in, and it's part of what everybody's talking about. They're talking about mechanical load, metabolic load. They're talking about heart rate variability, quick recovery tests. It's there, and the expectation is that you'll know it, and you'll be part of it, and you'll utilize this stuff. And so when you fall behind on this stuff, basically they're saying, well, they really know what they're doing, and you could be right on top of it and be a great strength coach and not have this data-driven world like we're in. But what I'm saying is just that at some point in time you'll have to utilize it just like I had to, more or less. So, any questions? Any questions for me? I'll be glad to take a few questions and comments, criticism. Come on, get out of here. All right, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.